Nice morning this morning. I wanted to make a video today, a little bit longer form, talking about one specific topic. Now, this is going to be a little bit of a ramble, but I am going to focus primarily on one topic, and that is responsibility as it relates to our spiritual path. Now, this is a thing that I think that a lot of people miss, a lot of people struggle with, even many folks who might consider themselves to be very spiritually advanced. I think a lot of folks underestimate the significance of our responsibility as conscious beings. Now, I'm going to make a little bit of a possibly controversial statement here, and that is that I will strongly argue that your level of assumed responsibility is directly in alignment with your growth and your progress as a human being spiritually. Now, what does that mean? Well, pretty obvious, right? What responsibility means, right? Responsibility means that we are assuming and taking on what we are directly or indirectly responsible for as it relates to our life path, as it relates to others, how we affect other people, the planet, things of that nature, right? Now, there's a lot to be said as it relates to this. We have adults, many adults, that assume very little responsibility, right? You might potentially be able to see how that correlates with somebody who's not very progressed or developed. What's also interesting is that we have a certain group or sect of people that assume very little to no responsibility at first. Who might these people be? Children. What's very interesting, if you observe children from kind of a detached, non-judgmental place, is you'll recognize that children generally assume very, very little responsibility, right? Because they don't have that development yet. They don't have that development and understanding yet to recognize all the things that they're responsible for and that they need to be responsible for, right? That comes later as we grow and we turn into adults and we start to assume more responsibility. But why is it that some adults are able to assume so much responsibility while others are not? Could it be possible that some adults are much more spiritually advanced or inclined than others? I would argue that that's probably the case. I think that some adults and human beings are more progressed on their journey than others. Now, of course, we have some human beings that are given disabilities. I used to work with developmentally disabled people, people with Down syndrome, on the spectrum, autism, things of that nature. So with certain people like that, it's obviously not really their fault, but a lot of those types of folks, because of those developmental disabilities, are not really able to assume a lot of responsibility, right? Because of that cognitive impairment, or however you want to put it. Does this mean that those people are less spiritually evolved or maybe deserve some sort of punishment or whatever, right? Of course not. But I view this as a possibly multi-lifetime journey that spirals and kind of roller coasters out while assuming more and more responsibility, possibly over many lifetimes. There are a lot of people out there who like to think of themselves as, advanced, or think of themselves as one of the chosen people or whatever. There's a lot of religious people out there that think that they are saved just because they believe in Jesus, or a lot of people that think that they are, going to heaven or whatever, because they can do something as simple as dunk themselves in some water, be baptized. That means they're good to go. I personally think that this is a very, very missed lack of judgment, right? I think that this is a gross misinterpretation of one's responsibility, one's duty to increase their responsibility and their maneuverings through this world and how it affects others. There are a lot of people that are wearing a cross around their neck that litter, that don't care very much about the planet, aren't really that aware or interested in their effects on other people, their behavior, their actions, how they raise their children, whatever, how this affects others in this coexistence and this shared existence here on this planet. A lot of people think that they got a cross around their neck and that they can go to church every Sunday or whatever. They think that they're absolved of these responsibilities and what it takes to become evolved as a conscious, sentient human being. Again, I would argue that I think this is a large mistake. I think that if you truly are, let's say, a Christian, for example, I really do believe if you want to do it the right way, you need to truly assume more and more responsibility. And that includes the big things and the little things, right? That includes the little things like, do you take your cart back to the cart thing where they go, right at the grocery store in the parking lot? Do you take it back when you're done, or do you just leave it somewhere crappy out in the parking lot for somebody else to deal with? That's such a great example. It's such a great litmus test for where you're at as a human being. Just a basic litmus test. Do you do that? Because nobody's going to force you to do it, right? It's not illegal, whatever. You can leave your cart out in a parking space, something like that. You might get a dirty look or whatever, but nobody's going to force you to put that cart back where it belongs. But do you do that? Do you do that of your own accord? If not, well, there's not really a nice way to say this, but you've probably got a long way to go. You've probably got a long way to go, because that is just basic litmus test of what it takes to be a human being, right? What are you doing when nobody is watching? How are you acting? You know, I've tried to make it a point over the last several years, especially when I lived back in Colorado. I've got, you know, some preparedness gear in my truck. I've got some moving blankets. I've got tow strap, battery charger, power bank type thing for a vehicle, stuff of that nature. I've always tried to make it a point when I see somebody on the side of the road that needs help. Maybe they've got, you know, maybe they're stuck in a snowbank or whatever. I've always tried to make it a point, if I'm able to, and it's doable without compromising my safety, to stop and help. And I've noticed that almost every time I have watched tens to hundreds of cars drive by, and I'm the one that stops. Lots of people that go by and don't help, very few that stop and do help. In my opinion, that's just yet another example of kind of the basic responsibility and duty that we have that we owe each other, that I see very few people taking the initiative to embody that, right? I've seen a lot of videos due to the nature of my previous work of somebody having a medical emergency, maybe somebody getting physically attacked. I'm sure you've seen these videos. How many people are sitting there watching, doing nothing, or maybe taking their phone out and filming it, doing nothing to help that person, whether they don't know how to help that person or maybe they're afraid, whatever. How many people sit there and do nothing? There's that one video, I never actually saw the video, I heard about it. I don't really need to see the video. I can only imagine, of the woman that was apparently being raped on the subway in New York City, I believe it was. And there were several people that were there that could have helped her. Nobody helped. People watched. I think a couple people filmed. Absolutely horrendous. If that does not just disgust you to your absolute core, you have little to no humanity left, and I feel sorry for you. That's a perfect example of how far sunken we have gotten as a society, unfortunately. This word responsibility is so important, and it can permeate so many things in your life. It affects everything. What about our politics nowadays? This is one thing where I'll admit that I still have some growth and work to do myself. How many of us sit here and want to blame politicians want to blame the other side, right? What's the other side doing? What are the Democrats doing that I don't like? What are the Republicans doing that I don't like, right? Well, what is my responsibility and my role in this? Whether it be, what agendas am I supporting that maybe aren't the best for humanity and the planet? What agendas or, whatever that are maybe beneficial for the planet that I'm not supporting because I don't like that side? Maybe I'm a Democrat or whatever, liberal, and I just don't like guns. For whatever reason, I don't even really know that much about them. I just don't really like them. And I'm going to vote no on anything that has to do with gun freedoms because I don't like them, and I don't like the conservatives and the Republicans that are kind of pushing for those freedoms. Maybe that's not the best way to approach it. Maybe I'm absolving myself of some responsibility to actually educate myself surrounding firearms and actually understand the bigger picture of why those freedoms are so important, why firearms exist, why human beings have used them for so many centuries, right? This is not a new thing. These are centuries that human beings have used firearms. Maybe I need to understand and educate myself a little bit more, take on some more responsibility, maybe go take a firearm class, actually learn a bit more about them. As a previous firearm instructor, I've taught hundreds and hundreds of students, including old folks, including women, including kids, 12-year-olds, whatever, right? I've taught a lot of people about guns. And I have found a pretty common theme when it comes to people who were maybe previously anti-gun, something of that nature. There was generally a lack of education and experience. And a lot of the times, folks who were previously anti-gun got to the point where they were afraid for their life or afraid for somebody they cared about's life, whatever, especially lately with what's going on with the government and some of the weird political stuff and the rioting, all that. I have had some previously very liberal people, even currently liberal people, who have come and taken my class because they don't feel safe anymore, which is very understandable, right? But that's a good example of maybe needing to make yourself a little bit more responsible and seeing the other side's view and trying to understand where they're coming from. Vice versa, right? I'll give the opposite example to stay unbiased here and fair. How many conservatives want to just completely dismiss some of the liberal folks' viewpoints just because they don't like the liberals, right? When it comes to things like, climate change, being aware of our impact on the earth. Excuse me, I myself feel a little bit conflicted on the climate change stuff, but I would hope that we could all agree that us human beings have a very significant impact on this earth. And I see a pretty consistent theme with the conservative type folks, and that is that there is a disregard for really recognizing our impact on this earth, right? Whether or not you believe that the earth's climate is changing due to human beings, whether or not you believe in the theories related to greenhouse gases and some of that stuff, I think that you should at least be able to recognize and admit that we have a large impact on this planet. And just let alone the trash and litter that is created on a day-to-day basis is unbelievable. And it's a problem, right? The way that we are polluting our water, our air, etc., is very, very significant and needs to be changed, right? As a conservative type-minded person, you should be able to admit that. If you can't, you are probably absolving yourself of that responsibility. That's very important. I'm going to pick on the religious people again a little bit here. If you're a Christian and you think that, well, our impact on this planet doesn't really matter because this is just a little trial run, and then after this, as long as I believe in Jesus and I'm saved, then I'm all good, right? It doesn't really matter what happens here because I'm just going to get to go to heaven anyways because I believe in Jesus and I go to church on Sunday or whatever. If you're in that mentality, that framework, I would really encourage you to shift that paradigm because, once again, in my humble opinion, you are really missing the mark there. In my opinion, I would also go as far to say that you're sinning The etymology of the word sin does not mean to commit evil or do wrong. It means to miss the mark. That is the history of that word and where it comes from. Sinning means you're missing the mark. I would argue, if you're in the previous mentality I just suggested, you're missing the mark. There are lessons to be learned here. This is almost like a school, you could say, right? A school for the soul. We're here to learn and grow. We're not here to have fun. We're not here to make more money or whatever, have more sex or whatever. We're here to learn and grow. That's the primary function of why we are here. And in that, one of the biggest lessons to be learned is responsibility. So I would encourage you to ask yourself, when it comes to any facet of your life, when you are, that might be business, that might be relationships, that might be, again, your spiritual practice, whatever that looks like for you, right? If you're a Christian or a Muslim or you're Jewish, you're not religious, maybe you're atheist, maybe you're a Satanist, I really don't care. I would challenge you to ask yourself, when it comes to these different facets of your life, is your responsibility increasing or not when it comes to the growth in these areas of your life? I really, really think this is so important. If you want to truly grow in any of these areas, one of the top things on your list, priorities in my opinion, should be, is my responsibility increasing or not? I hope that this gave you a couple things to think about. This was, again, kind of a little bit of a ramble, but I wanted to do a little bit of a longer form version of something that's been on my mind lately. And this is an area, too, that I am absolutely working on myself all the time. This is not something that I am above anyone, above any of you. This is something that I stand shoulder to shoulder here with you. I'm learning all the time. I'm growing all the time. There is more responsibility that I am trying to undertake and recognize all the time in all aspects of my life. With my businesses, I'm constantly recognizing and learning more responsibility that I need to take on. With my relationship, all the time, there's more responsibility that I am needing to undertake. Spiritually, of course, absolutely, there's more and more responsibility all the time. Probably the biggest one, right, with my spiritual path is that I am always recognizing and having to be held accountable to myself of my level of responsibility, right? It's a journey, and I, in ways, feel like I'm failing all the time, every day, but I think that's just kind of how it goes, right? I think that's part of the path, is there's just always more improvement to be made. That's the beauty of it. And I hope that you're feeling like you're going to sit there with me and improve with me. If you enjoyed this video, hope you got something out of it. That's awesome. If you watched this far, that is also awesome. Please check out ethermentoring.com. I still have 4 more slots as of this video for some free one-to-one video consultations. If that's something you're interested in, please visit my website and sign up. It's awesome. I think that you'll at least get something out of that. And keep after it, put that work in, and I promise that you will see results. Have a good week.